Since last year when ChatGPT announced that offerings, we have been trying it out. And I think the first thing we look at is like how applicable is this new technology that can help us defender, right? As we are so busy with so much workload, how can you offload some of these things to help us fight the war in a more effective way, right? So we have been testing it out. And late last year, we actually created the MITRE attack on GPT Store, right? OpenAI GPT Store, and we tested it out. It gives quite interesting results. So we actually put it onto the public store there, and then things evolve. And this opportunity for us to present some of our findings, some of our use case, and how it evolved into something that's more interesting, right? It's a lot of work in development, so we'd like to share with you that. Right, so a little bit about SporeX AI. We are a new startup in the area of LLM and Gen AI. Primary focus is in helping CISO and security practitioner analyze the threats that they have, right, and give, I would say, very strong advisory based on the understanding of threat landscape, threat actors, previous attack, some bulletins, and as well as the MITRE framework and all other frameworks that we are putting in to help address that concern. So it is a very evolving field. So some of the things that we do may be only based on the results that we have tested. So we won't claim that it is 100% absolute, right? And it's still a very evolving field, right? So it's a very exciting area as well. Okay, so in terms of the evolving landscape, we know all this stuff, right? We are practitioners, we know skill gaps, right? It's very hard for us to find experienced, skilled defenders who are able to look at massive amount of data in an environment to analyze it. Right? So even if a lot of our enterprise customers has been outsourcing this to cybersecurity vendors to do all kind of work for them, be it attack surface management or threat landscape, threat modeling, it's not 100%, I would say, comprehensive. Reason being because it's just too much data and there's not much time for us to do all kind of evaluation. So it becomes very tough for a human to achieve that. Even if you have a large team, it is also quite draining on the resource. So what we're looking at is actually how do we use technology to help us comb through all these things quickly, understand the most important parts, and apply the framework that we have in place to understand the threats, the data sources, and what we learn in the MITRE, right? Attack version 14.1 and how we apply that. So since 15 is also just released this week, so we are also looking into it and see what are the changes, how we apply it and how we enhance the model itself. So it's something very interesting that we are working on. Right, and that's where we come up to the need for all this new stuff that we have. Right, the other part of it is also from a CISO standpoint, it's always very difficult for them to present a layman language report to the management executive, right? Because everything in the past when I was a CISO, I report that to my management, right? Tell them very as layman as I could, but still keep the context of the technical part of it. But the management team is still finding it a little bit complicated. What is DDoS? Right? Simple like that, right? What does it mean to them? So what we have done in ChatGPT is also that using the LLM and Gen GPT stuff, we are able to summarize it in a more business language, right? Remove the target jargon and give it something that an executive can understand so they know the concerns and the priorities that we have, and then they could bless us with the right level of support. Right, so that's what we are doing. Right, the other part is also ability to comb through large amount of data and make sense. So this data is not just plain data that you put it into the LLM, right, to understand. Reason being because currently training LLM is going to be very complex and I would say resource intensive. What we have done is actually to look into a new way of packaging the data so that the LLM through RAG, right, and other training models, we're able to improvise based on the current context of the customer environment, right? So that is something that we are working on. And the next thing for that is also we are trying to build agents around that to help us do all this work in a more efficient way, right? Right, so the other part is that using the framework is always a good stuff, right? Like what we learned yesterday during the workshop and today is also about which part of the framework through the various presenters in the morning, right, and following that is also to understand from a different point of view, how do we use different framework, different external tools to help us supplement the findings, supplement the reinforce the learning, and help us to be as accurate and resilient as possible, right? So there's a lot of things that has been improving. Right, so as we all know, all this GPT stuff, it evolves, right, and help us a lot of things. So I think if you guys have actually tried this GPT, you throw in a report and ask it to analyze, right, you you actually can find some very interesting insights based on the understanding of the LLM and the context that you add in. So I think this combination of technology between GPT and the MITRE framework help us to understand the massive amount of information through the security bulletin, right? Help us understand all this and try to advise us in terms of what is the threat landscape, what is the threat actor motive, the MO, right? Modus operandi, right? And then what are the important areas that we should be focused on to make sure that we are not exposed, right? So these are some of the things that we do, right? And we find these are quite interesting. So in the simple one, I just go through this few slides quickly, right? The details you can go through the slide at a later point when it's being published, right? So automated threat landscape and dynamic threat detection is basically we use all the tools that we have, comb through, get the result. So one thing that we are also working on is integration with SIEM, right? To work together with the SIEM, either taking data from the SIEM to analyze and also throwing inputs back just to quantify and verify the importance of or prioritization of the findings that we get. Right. Also, the other one, I think it works very well is actually the enhanced incident reporting analysis, right? In terms of writing report, generating report, in the following slide, I have a sample one to show you what it can do, right? It actually fits very well. So one of the areas that we're also working on is not just based on a single LLM, we are working on a multiple of LLMs to actually treat them like an expert in certain field with certain context so that we get various response and we amalgamate all the good stuff and try to summarize it in a format that is more acceptable, right? So there's certain guidelines based on the requirements. Right. In terms of the training and simulation, I think this is one of the areas that potentially that could happen is to look at in terms of even understanding environments, then try to look at it as assuming you are an APT-29, how would you use your previous experience and the use case? How would you come in and try to recon into my environment? And which are the weakest points that you think you will be able to penetrate in? So if you have the right context, you can actually simulate and try to advise based on what these attack vectors and the APTs are doing and whether is it applicable to your environment. So I think there are a lot of things that could potentially be very useful in probably soon in the next 6-12 months of technology improvements. And we are also very excited about all these things. Right. The fifth one is actually predictive security posture enhancement. One of the areas in most companies is always about the complexity in the environment, be it hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, right? And also challenges in terms of the software stack. So one of the things that we are also seeing in the industry is also the looking in terms of a standardized SBOM, right? Software bill of material, so that we can actually go through to make sure that vulnerabilities are also measured against them and where are the areas of threats through your supply chain. So it's not just in your own environment. Today, we all look into like the whole supply chain, right, based on your various software vendors, what are the risks that you actually will inherit based on them, right? So these are all the important stuff we also synergize through the GPT and that, right? So this is the ATT&CK Copilot based on the 14.1 framework, right? We have that on the GPT store, so you can actually go and try out. So I just want to show you an example here, right? So like for this CSO Online says they digs up a ransomware gang in stealth for over a decade. So this is a simple report. So reading this through from a practitioner point of view, you will be able to understand why this has been evading detection for so long and how it suddenly just surfaced out, right? But I think in terms of translating that to a layman executive, a CISO or the CIO level, right? What we have tried using this ATT&CK Copilot is to actually ask it to analyze the potential security vulnerability and provide an impact analysis and threat intelligence report, right? So this is what we go, right? And the output it came out, right, based on the configuration that we set, is actually to give a very simple understanding of the threat landscape. Who is this Ruby cup, right? Then you also look at in terms of the vulnerabilities and attack vectors, CVEs, MITRE, as well as software components of this attack, right? And also the capabilities and MO of the APT threat, right? So it comes out in a very simple language, pointing out to the right CVEs, the LoRa framework, right? And also how they attack and how they do it. So in a layman term, you will be able to understand what it means. So I think from a skill standpoint, when we are working with our security analysts, they will be better to understand, oh, so you actually meant that, so they know what they need to do, right? And take actions to look at detection and also prevention. The later part of this report is also look into the financial motivations and techniques of this APT, of this vulnerability, and also the threat intelligence and defense recommendations. Right. So these are the things that it can come up. But of course, this is still in an early stage of development. We are enhancing with more data points so it can be more prescriptive, right, in the coming time. So that's a quick sample of how this MITRE Copilot can evolve. Right. In also the other part is also once we have the detection capability and analysis capability, the next one is actually incident response. How can we use GPT to help us to do incident response? So in our viewpoint is that once you'll be able to analyze the environment situation, right, understand how the attack vectors can come in and where are your weaknesses, right, you can actually craft out your own incident response plan to it. Right. This is something that could actually be done quickly through the technology. And this is something that I think is pretty promising to help us save a lot of time in terms of that. The other part is actually real-time decision support, right? With very specific configuration environment of your whole infrastructure, right? GPT will be able to analyze data quickly and point to you where could be potential risk threats. One of the areas that we start with is always look at threat modeling as a start on all the critical systems that you have identified. Understand as much scope as possible to prevent your crown jewel, right, to protect them from all these risks. So that is the first thing that we do. Then, of course, through progressive data points around the environment, right, we'll be able to do more comprehensive sweep of the whole environment, moving upwards through the stack to the entire attack surface management. Right. So last but not least, actually the communication part. In GPT, it is always easier to generate natural language communications, right? Because the large language models able to understand context a bit better. Of course, it's still far away from what human does, but I think it is a very good progressive step towards achieving the goal of helping us do our job faster. Okay, so quick overview of some of the future of this cybersecurity, what we see. I think threat detection is also something that is very new as we have MITRE framework coming up with new threat detection capability and use cases. For us is how do we implement that quickly? How can we do a threat hunt with that new information, right, and let agents run the job? All right, so these are some of the very new opportunities that I think is really promising in that space. Right. The other part is also, I think, in terms of proactive risk assessment, right, understand your threat landscape, which are the areas in terms of software, supply chain, right, which are the areas of great risk and concern, and prioritize and rank them. So I think in the last few sessions we talked about ranking all your adversary, which is the high risk, high threat, which are the ones that we should focus our time and priorities on. I think that's very important, right? But I think this adds another layer for help us to really come through quickly, to really give us a more accurate prescription of what needs to be done and which are the areas we should focus in a fine-tooth comb, right? So I think this will be some of the new interesting things. Okay, so this part here is also with the cybersecurity framework as a follow-up. So really, I think one of the very important part that we see is also incident response playbook, because I guess today is to do incident response and prepare a playbook that works, right? It requires a lot of experience, right? So I guess it is also very difficult and time-consuming for incident responders to really ensure that they have the right playbook to execute against the threats. AI can actually come in to do a lot of things like what Neil has mentioned, right? Through the AI, through machine learning, you understand better, you know what works, what don't, and hopefully through technology, we actually apply those insights into what we deliver as part of the whole landscape. So today, most of the LLM are very strong with coding, right? If you look at coding for a lot, whether Llama 3 or OpenAI ChatGPT 4, right? They basically have a very strong understanding of how code works, what code should be done. So if you look at it, we have the challenge of moving between Sigma to various SIEM format. That's a big challenge. And during the translation, what if you lose fidelity across, and then you'll be missing gaps, right? So I guess AI can actually work very well in the aspect, provided that it has learned how to look into various query languages formats and also through a common format like Sigma. So I think that will actually help a lot. So just to give you a quick glimpse of the key takeaways, right? So I think it is a starting point. Hopefully, I think next year when we come back, the landscape will be very, very different, right? And it'll be more exciting stories around this area of evaluation, right? So we are very looking forward to that. So just to give you a quick application of what we do within our SporeX, just a 1-2 slide, right? We look at cybersecurity, right? These are the things that we have identified as low-hanging fruits that Gen AI can help us with our LLMs, right? So basically, incident analysis recommendation, UEBA, right? MITRE ATT&CK integration. Right? So these are some of the things that we can actually do very well, right? And we're looking into that, right? So in terms of a quick view, the summary of the Copilot, right? Very similar. But I think in this part is that now we have looked into integration with compliance standards like NIST, CIS frameworks. You can apply that to your own internal policy documents, compare, identify the gaps that you have and where are the areas of improvement. All right, so these are just a quick glimpse of what is potentially coming very quickly around the corner.